All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Charlene Carey, and I am the Character Day Coordinator. This is our 5th year of having Character Day in the Bahamas, and it's been a wonderful ride. We have an awesome presentation put together for you today. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. So the Character Day Bahamas is brought to you by the PACE Foundation. The PACE Foundation supports the PACE School, which is a school for teen moms. And they find that a lot of their work centers around character building. So when the president of the foundation found out about Character Day, they thought it would be a great fit for their organization. And since then, we have seen Character Day grow throughout over the years. Luckily, we now have funding to now do 3 more years. So I just want to give you guys a little background on Zoom. On your screens, you should be able to see raise hand. Raise hand allows you maybe at the end of the session, if you want to be able to speak with the presenters, we could potentially switch your modes into panelist mode for you to be able to do that. So we won't be using that feature a lot. You will be using the chat feature to share your ideas. You'll be using the Q&A feature. So after each session, we will have a 5-minute Q&A session so you can post your questions in the Q&A section. You will see more on your screen, which takes you to other features. So right now you should be seeing raise hand, chat, Q&A, and more. We will also be using the poll feature. So we're going to do our first poll. Our first poll is, why did you decide to join this webinar? So it should be up and live now. Please choose your selection. Right, ignore number 5, please. It says 5. So I love learning new things. Awesome speaker lineup, great topic. My boss made me do it. Oh, no one to say my boss made me do it? That's wonderful. We are all here just to enjoy and learn. You know, it's been a struggle. This past year has been really, really difficult for the Bahamas. All right, so let's see our results. So we're sharing results. So 68% of you say, I love learning new things. That's our teachers, our educators, our guidance counselors, our youth workers. We do this because we have a love of learning. Some of us love the speakers. So the 2 things go hand in hand because those speakers have wonderful things to teach us, right? I'm looking forward to learning stuff myself. And the topic certainly is timely. All right. So the way we will do this is that we're going to have a 15-minute presentations. And then after each presentation, we have a 5-minute Q&A session. So as the presentations are happening, you can type your questions using the Q&A feature, and then they'll be answered at the end of the 5-minute period. Once the Q&A session is taking place, you could also insert your questions, and we'll try our best to answer as many of them as we can. So looking at our agenda for today, the first step is I'm going to do a little intro on what Character Day is, and our topic is tapping into the strengths of the community in times of change, uncertainty, and isolation. We've been through a lot as a country in the last year, looking at Hurricane Dorian and its devastating impacts on our communities in Abaco and Grand Bahama. All the world has been going through this COVID situation, and things change literally daily, okay? We were in sort of normal-ish mode, and now we're in complete nationwide lockdown. So there's been a lot of changes, a lot of uncertainty, and as we are locked down in our homes, certainly a lot of isolation. So after I do the introduction, we'll have first speakers who will speak on culture and empathy. Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell-Dean and Jewel Taylor. And then we'll have a talk about resilience by Miss Helene de Jong. After that, I'll just quickly talk about what are the next steps, because we have a second seminar coming up same time next week, and we'll do a little mindfulness practice to put us in a great frame of mind to handle the situation that we're in. So quickly, what is Character Day? So Character Day is a day where we look at character development. Anyone can participate. It's not just schools, anyone. So individuals, business, as a parent, at home with your kids, you could choose to do something. What is the something you do? It's up to you. But we'd like it to be something that's going to promote discussion on character development. We're looking, who am I really? I'm sure a lot of us have asked ourselves that question over this time, as we have so many decisions to make. Do we wear a mask? Do we not? Why do I? Right? Who would I like to be? And how can I develop and further strengthen my character strengths? And we're looking this year at celebrating during the month of October, but we are extremely flexible because flexibility is needed in these times of change. This is just a quick overview of the periodic table of character strengths. And so today we were looking at empathy, which we're looking at humanity, really, the category humanity, love, kindness, social intelligence. We're looking also at resilience, which as we strengthen our character, we become more and more resilient, right? So we're looking at all of these different traits. Here are some photos that show what groups have done over the years with Character Day. So they have been, up here we see at the University of the Bahamas, a panel discussion. We have had tree plantings where we're looking at love for the earth, love for the environment, appreciation of beauty, assemblies, CC Sweeting here with its day of service, a preschool here where kids were encouraged to create a cape to show the strengths that they thought that they had. So what's our goal? Why are we really doing this? You know, every year teachers tell us, or people who attend our workshops, that they really enjoy this opportunity because this workshop gives them a time for reflection, a time for rejuvenation, motivation before the school year begins. And this school year is going to be very interesting. We had a little taste last semester of how online schooling might work, and we're looking at all sorts of different options. We want to discuss, we're discussing ideas related to character development and preparing you with strategies that you could then incorporate into your practice. And we also want you to think about not only what can you do for Character Day, but what you can do in the longer term. So I just have one more poll to go. No, actually, I'm going to hold that for later. I'm going to hold that for later. And I'm going to move forward now to our first presenter, and who will be introduced by Karen McCartney.
Good morning and welcome once again to our Character Day webinar 2020. My name is Carey McCartney and I will be your moderator for today's session. Our first set of presenters are two wonderful ladies, Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell-Dean and Miss Jewel Taylor. Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell-Dean manifests her purpose as an Afrocentric community psychologist who harnesses the revolutionary power of love to effect positive social change. A graduate of Florida A&M and North Carolina State University, she is the incoming chair of the psychology department at the University of the Bahamas. Her research focuses on the use of culture as a tool for the empowerment of those within the African diaspora and mental health advocacy. The most recent example of which was a study examining effects of COVID-19 related stressors in a Bahamian population, and in 2019, the King of the Conch Fest, a Bahamian competition with the mission to preserve conch and culture that she co-founded with her husband, Stephen. Her professional appointments are both local and international and have included the National Reparations Committee of the Bahamas and the International Relations Chairs of the Association of Black Psychologists. And her academic honors include Psi Chi and Alpha Kappa Mu Honor Society. She remains connected to her community as a regular contributor to Guardian Radio, a coordinator of the Niambi Project, a grassroots community-based youth organization, a member of #WeGotYou, the Hurricane Dorian Psychosocial Relief Group out of the National Arts Gallery of the Bahamas, and the U.S. Embassy's inaugural Academy of Women Entrepreneurs. That is our Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell-Dean. Joining Dr. Niambi Hall Campbell will also be Ms. Jewel Taylor. Jewel Taylor is a school psychologist at the Ministry of Education, where she provides academic and behavioral testing for school-aged children in the Bahamas. Jewel enjoys being a change agent in the students' lives by providing academic and behavioral recommendations. Her passion for mental health services began with her providing sound advice to friends, family, and college classmates. Jewel graduated from the College of the Bahamas with a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and went on to obtain her Master's of Arts degree in forensic psychology from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology in 2017. Currently, Jewel is employed as a school psychologist, but she also provides teletherapy services to the adult population. Jewel is an active member of her community, and she currently serves as a board member for the PACE Foundation, a director for counseling of the Bahamas Sexual Health Rights Association, a youth council member, and co-chair of the Children's Fellowship at her local church, the Embassy International. So I now present to you Dr. Niambi and Ms. Jewel Taylor.
Good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for that introduction, Karen. Having been a part of Character Day since the inception, I must say that this is a little strange, this format that we have today, because I really miss being next to all of you and seeing all of your faces. I saw some names that I know have been here for the past 5 years. So welcome back to those who are returning, and welcome to those of you for whom this is your first Character Day education or Character Education Day experience. I'll get it right. So I want to talk to you today about culture. And we'll start off with this first slide, because I think that culture, or as Karen said, I really think that culture can be used as a tool for empowerment. And so when we talk about culture, what are we really talking about? So this definition is the one that I use that says culture is that which gives humans a general design for living and a pattern for interpreting reality, right? So culture is the lens through which we interpret our world. I say that culture is dynamic and contested, and that's just basically saying that culture always changes, right? And that people's definition of what the culture is always going to be contested, right? We have conversations every year about Junkanu and what is Junkanu or what is not Junkanu. So we contest culture and it changes. And so while those are some of the more academic definitions, I have this big picture of the fish in the bowl, because one of the other ways that I like to discuss culture is that culture is to humans as water is to fish. Right? So this little fish is just swimming around in his fish bowl and, you know, going to his fish school and going to his fish home and everything, and not necessarily aware that he's in the water. But he would probably be aware of the water if he was to either be taken out of the water, right, altogether, or if the water in his bowl were to change. So if he was a freshwater fish, and then suddenly the water was filled with salt, or if he was a saltwater fish and it was filled with fresh water. So culture is something that we move and we work in. We're not always necessarily of how it functions in our lives, but it has a real role in the way that we function. So if we were to talk about Bahamian culture specifically, or when we talk about cultures, world cultures, we break them down into individualistic cultures. I don't know what just happened. Individualistic cultures and collectivist cultures. And so I think that the Bahamas is, I think that the Bahamas is a very unique place in that we have a, I'm trying to go back to the slides. Okay. I think that the Bahamas is a very unique place in that we have a mix of individualistic cultures and collectivist cultures. So individualistic cultures are cultures in which people really value the worth of the individual, right? Pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps and making it on your own. While collectivist cultures value more interdependence than independence, right? Family and how do people depend on one another. So I think in the Bahamas, we have a really good mix of the two. And I'm sure that that could be a conversation that we could have, or you may have in your Character Day education plans. But when we talk about worldview, I'm not sure what's going on with the slides. Sorry. But the worldview says that there are optimal worldviews, and these are some of the elements of cultures that, or strengths that we can find in different cultures, right? So an optimal way of perceiving the world is one in which reality is found within the soul, not necessarily in objects, where we place primacy on the relationships between people, and where we value life based on human relationships, not necessarily material things. So my research looks at the role of culture, and so in Bahamian secondary education, and in talking to secondary education teachers, we found that there were 4 main elements that they said that these teachers should have in order to be culturally relevant within their classrooms, right? They should have a strong cultural knowing, be able to design culturally relevant curriculum, acknowledge cultural differences within their classrooms and their students. So this one particularly talked about having use for dialect, or finding the place that dialect fits within your classrooms, right? Even if you're teaching English, how can you use dialect in ways that help the students or motivate the students or help them to understand what it is that you're trying to get across? And then minimizing cultural differences. So there may be differences between the culture of the household that your students are coming from and then the culture of the schools. And so how can you as educators minimize those differences to really enhance the students' experience? And so these were tips that secondary education teachers brought about. But I know that we also have a lot of primary education educators in here. And one of the main things that the primary educators talked about is the way that you decorate your classrooms, right? Using Bahamian culture to decorate your classrooms. So how do you do that now if you don't have a classroom necessarily to share with your students? So the questions that I want to, and you can put these in the chat, is how can Bahamian culture or the strengths of Bahamian culture aid in online learning? right? So when we think about the strengths of Bahamian culture, like our resilience, we've definitely seen our resilience come into play in this past year. When we think about our humor as a people, right? We like to laugh and have fun. When we think about our values for family, how can we use these cultural strengths to really aid in online learning? And one of the other things that I was thinking that we could use this year in our online platforms is to really take advantage of the fact that we have access or connection to all of the islands in ways in which we might never have had them before. So I noticed when people were signing in that we have people from Abaco on the call, we have people from Long Island on the call. I know we have New Providence in the call. Is there a way that you can connect with some of these other teachers in different islands and have your students experience the culture of those islands in virtual ways, right? So if you're talking about blue holes, for example, in your classroom, can you have your students in Abaco speak to your students in New Providence about the blue holes that they have in Abaco? Or maybe take pictures or go along with them as you visit the blue holes in Abaco. What is it like to be a student in Long Island versus a student in New Providence? So many of our youth really only get to experience the Bahamas based on the idea or based on the island that they are on. And in particular, our students in Nassau. Right? We sometimes think that the Bahamas is limited to the islands in which we live. Even though we know that we have a family of islands, we don't really get to recognize the fullness of the culture in each of those different islands. So maybe in this challenging online environment, we can take this challenge and use it to really appreciate all of the various cultures in the islands. So those are some of the tools or tips that I think that we could use in creating our online classrooms and using our culture in ways that really empowers us and makes our experience a little bit more engaging for our students this year. And so I will turn that over now to Jewel. Karen, is that correct? Okay.
Yes, Jewel is up next.
Hi, everybody. Let me see. Did it move? Okay, yes. So just piggybacking off what Dr. Campbell said, you know, there are a lot of characteristics that we as a Bahamian culture that, you know, that we take part in. And I believe that empathy is definitely one of them. You know, we have been through a lot during the past year with the Hurricane Dorian and now actually going through this pandemic, which is worldwide. And I actually think that being empathetic, you know, is one of the strengths that we need to use now more than ever. And with looking at empathy, actually, empathy is basically the ability to share and understand one's feelings and emotions. So empathy allows you to step beyond your current feelings and emotions and actually embody the pain and emotions of another person. So with empathy, it's being more so much of being pure, being genuine, and being true, and not actually feeling pity or sorrowful for another person, but it's actually feeling their pain. So with being empathetic, it's a big difference than being sympathetic. And sometimes we get empathetic and sympathetic completely mixed up. So what I really want to do is actually to just basically explain the two. Okay, let's see if we could go back one more. Okay, so even if you look at this picture, sympathy is more so much of showing sorrowful for or being sorrowful or being pitiful to another person, saying that, oh, well, that sucks. However, empathy is actually, you could see that they are embodying what that person is going through. So sympathy looks at feeling pity and sorry for another person, where, as I mentioned before, empathy is actually feeling another person's pain. Empathy allows you to understand emotions, whereas sympathy just allows us to take part in another person's feelings. For example, have you ever vented to a person and you felt that they were pitying you or that they just weren't getting it? Although they respected your feelings and your emotions and they acknowledged them, they were basically more so much on the surface level. However, have you ever vented to a person and they just instantly got it? They understood how you felt and they felt the pain with you. And that's basically the difference. It isn't something physical that you could more so much see. However, it's something that you could feel. And what I wanted to say is that even though sorry, you can still be empathetic, although you may have not been through the exact same thing as another person. So, for example, if somebody is explaining a type of pain or a type of loss, or even like, let me use the Hurricane Dorian, for example. I wasn't there as it happened in Abaco and in Grand Bahama like other persons. However, when we had to go out and basically help persons or counsel persons through it, although I didn't went through that same thing with them, I actually embodied their pain by understanding what they went through. Although I didn't experience it from that perspective, I understand what it is to actually watch your life flash before your eyes, or losing it all, or actually having no hope. So although I didn't physically, or although I didn't went through the exact same thing, I actually understand those emotions. I didn't pity them or I didn't feel sorry for them, but I knew what, like, I could have feel their pain, if that makes sense. I embody that pain because I know what it is. So in this next slide, it's actually a video that we're going to play that basically talks about empathy and sympathy.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, Dr. Campbell, you want to say something?
No, sorry. Go ahead.
So yeah, so like that video, it basically explained the difference between empathy and sympathy. And a lot of times, you know, we just have to challenge ourselves and actually step out of our comfort zone and actually connect with something deep within us to actually embody and feel the pain that somebody is going through, not so much being surface level or actually just trying to say something to make the situation feel better. Sometimes, you know, your presence is good enough, you know? And with that being said, let me go to the next slide. Okay, so, uh-oh. Okay, so I don't know.
All right, so right now it's time for the Q&A. So I'll turn it over to Karen.
All right. So we just had a wonderful presentation by Dr. Niambi and Jewel. And as I was watching the chat, a lot of you really enjoyed the video, and Dr. Hall's discussion, that Dr. Niambi Hall's discussion on culture. Is there anything in particular that you guys would like to ask relative, or even if you don't have a particular question, if there's a comment that you would like to share relative to what we just heard from our two panelists? All right, so we have, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your first name, so I'm just gonna go with your last name. Says, following Ms. Simonet, or Mr. Simonet, I apologize. Following the passing of my dad, I was approached by difficult staff with a hug that was so welcoming. She did not say anything, but hugged me, and I will never forget that. And sometimes that's all we need. You know, as the questions come in, I think a lot of times we feel uncomfortable in difficult situations. So if one of your students come to you, if a coworker comes to you, and they're saying something to you that perhaps you've never experienced yourself, it's the awkwardness of that moment that can sometimes make us brush it off. And we sometimes feel that we have to fill the void by saying something. And that's not always the case. You don't always have to say something. Sometimes the best thing that you can do for someone is to connect with them just by listening. If you're a hugger or a toucher, asking them, is it okay for me to hug you? You know, is there anything that you need from me? If you just want me to listen to you, I'm here for you. We don't always have to make that person smile in that moment or trying to wish away the pain away. So that's just a little nugget of advice I have for you. And continue to connect to your students.
I just want to add to that in the virtual environment, you know, especially with our young students, not being able to give them that touch or that hug is sometimes difficult. And so I know even for me with my students at UB last semester, one of the ways that I was able to show empathy virtually was just by, and you don't have to do this because it requires a bit more, but by giving them my WhatsApp contact. Right, so we would meet in the Zoom sessions, but for students who I noticed couldn't log on, or they would be there half the session and then log out, right? Just messaging them and saying, are you okay? Are there some struggles that you might be having? So, you know, in this online environment, being empathetic might require a little bit more because we have to connect in different ways.
Yes, Dr. Niambi, thank you so much for that. And yes, a quick message in the group, you know, essentially, I know one of the things that I would have done, and you guys can try this if you have if your staff has a WhatsApp group, or if your class has a WhatsApp group, any organization that you're a part of, a quick question: hey, is everyone okay? Give me a thumbs up. If not, PC me, right? So you're opening the door for that conversation to happen. And just those are just little things. And with younger individuals, it also forces trust when you're just checking up on them with a simple question.
So Diana Curtis in the Q&A section wants to know, when is it appropriate to show sympathy instead of empathy with children?
Dr. Hall, you want to answer that?
Sympathy versus empathy with children. I don't think it's a matter of when it's okay or when it's not okay. I think that the thing that I like about empathy versus sympathy is that with empathy, especially because with children know if you're being sincere off the bat. And empathy requires a sincerity, right? That sympathy doesn't necessarily always have. So I think that the empathy with kids, like with adults, doesn't necessarily require any words. And so you can just sit with the child, or you can just, in this virtual environment, it's more difficult, right? But I think that in every situation, empathy works. Sympathy sometimes, but every situation, I think empathy works. That's the short answer.
All right, thank you, Niambi and Jewel. That is the end of our Q&A session. We will be moving on to our next presenter, Ms. Helene de Jong. Helene is a school counselor at both Lyford International School and the Focus Program. She is originally from the United States, but now calls the Bahamas home after living here for almost 14 years. Helene obtained a BA in Justice from American University in Washington, D.C. She worked as a parole and probation officer in Maryland before obtaining a teaching degree from George Mason University. Helene taught in New Delhi, India, Niambi, Niger, and Kampala, Uganda, before moving to Nassau. She obtained her MEd in Counseling and Development from Lamar University. She has a certification in positive psychology and life coaching. Helene is a volunteer counselor at the Bahamas Crisis Center. She is passionate about well-being and flourishing and helping others to thrive. Helene is also the mother of 4 grown daughters. She considers this her biggest accomplishment. I now present to you Miss Helene.
Thank you, Karen, and hi, everybody. I'm happy to be back with Character Day Bahamas. I started, I guess, 2 years ago. I had to miss last year for one of my daughter's weddings. So I'm glad to be back. Like Dr. Niambi, I really wish it was in person. I miss everybody's faces and that kind of energy. But we're all adapting. We're all resilient. When I first prepared the presentation for today, I didn't know we were going to be in yet another lockdown. So before I start the presentation, I just want to encourage us and remind us of some self-care strategies during this lockdown. Remember, we need to keep routine. That's key. Keep a daily routine to make sure we're including exercise and some sort of physical activity every day, to eat properly. I know we can be sitting around and snacking, but to make sure we're eating properly and getting enough sleep. And these are things, our well-being is really important for those of us that are, maybe parents, teachers, counselors that, serve other people. It's important for us to take care of ourselves. And as I'm presenting today, I'm going to talk about how we bounce back after COVID-19 and beyond. And, as Dr. Niambi pointed out, this is a resilient nation. In my 14 years here, I've seen it. We're all in a pandemic. This is new. Nobody in this world knows how to navigate. So these are suggestions on how we can continue with our resilience and how we can pass this resilience on to our children and our students. It's important, just like, when you're teaching a subject, we need to know the content area that we're teaching. So I encourage you, these strategies that I will be sharing, that you do them yourself, right? We can't teach what we don't know and we don't practice. So I'm going to try my attempt at, okay. So firstly is, what is resilience? We need a working definition, and the short definition is bounce back. It's how we come back after a hardship or something difficult in life. And resilience is determined by our inner strengths as well as environmental supports. So for the purpose today, I'm going to focus on the social supports that we have and that we provide for our students. Now, a lot of us may be familiar with post-traumatic stress disorder, which that comes with depression and anxiety, sometimes suicide, but not many people are familiar with something called post-traumatic growth. And in the field of positive psychology, we call post-traumatic growth is bouncing back better. So you see the bell curve, most people are resilient and they'll bounce back. But I want to focus a bit on how do we bounce back better from something like COVID-19, from a worldwide pandemic. And also your role as teachers, educators, counselors, how can we help with that post-traumatic growth or resilience? And so we can never underestimate the benefits of our relationships, that our relationships have with our students. And one important aspect of resilience is belonging, right? And so when students feel like they belong to our class, and like Dr. Niambi said, what's up them? How do we reach out? How do we stay connected virtually? And that's where we as educators and counselors have to be creative. Think back of your teacher. I love this. What a teacher writes on the blackboard of life can never be erased. And I'm sure each and every one of us can remember something hopefully more positive than negative, that how our teacher influenced us. And now more than ever, our actions, our words, our showing empathy to students is so crucial for building that empathy or building that resilience. So first and most important is to feel emotions. We tend to run from hard emotions, to hide them, stuff them, ignore them. But it's really important that we feel emotions and teach our children how to feel the emotions. So there's 3 N's, there's notice, name, and navigate. We're going to talk a bit, do a mindfulness practice a bit later, but mindfulness is putting that space in between the emotion and how you're going to respond rather than react. So I hear there's a lockdown. I feel sad. My reaction could be, I'm just going to go to bed for 2 weeks, forget it, not get dressed, and just be depressed. Or I hear there's a lockdown. I notice that in my body, I'm feeling sad. I think about, okay, what can I do during this time? I can read, I connect with family virtually. I can do the best that I can, find some new projects to occupy myself, and that could be my response. So the more that we notice, name, and navigate our feelings, the better we become at it, and the more resilient that we become. And I personally believe this is one of the biggest gifts that we can give to our students and our own children, is that ability to notice, name, and then navigate. And so some things that, and these are just a few suggestions of some strategies that we can do with the children, is start with, I feel sad when I can't see my friends. When I feel sad, I can. And then in the parentheses are just a few options, right? I can talk, some other ones, I can talk to my friends on the phone. I can color, I can listen to music, right? So we want to help them to name the feeling and then identify some strategies that they can do when they have the feeling. Now, the younger ones, and maybe even some of the older ones, don't know how to name. So that's where these cute little emojis come in handy, or the faces, right? You can help them identify an emoji and put an emotion to it so that they can start becoming familiar with that. And then, so that's naming it. But when we go to notice, I just want to skip to where do I feel coloring sheet. So it's just taking like a gingerbread man outline and having them say, okay, when you feel sad, color where you're feeling it. You know, maybe they color in their heart, in their head, in their stomach. And that's helping them to notice where they're feeling the emotions. So we have the notice, the name, and then the navigating is the top one, like the sentence completion. Emotional thermometer, right? We want them to know like how angry, how sad, how happy. So you can just draw an outline of a thermometer, 0 to 10. You know, where is your sadness? Where is your happiness? Okay, now, you know, maybe you're with your sadness, you're going to go color or go listen to music. Okay, now where is your sadness on the thermometer? So it can help them to be able to notice where on the range their feelings are. Journaling is very powerful, and I encourage all of you as adults to do that. That is such a great way to connect with our subconscious. And as we start writing about our feelings, some other things might come up that we're not even aware of. And so that's something we can teach as soon as kids can write. We can teach them that skill. And then just a word about anger management. You know, if our kids might be feeling angry about all of this, and so what can they do if they're feeling angry? Could they do jumping jacks? Can they listen to music? Can they do a sport? So these, again, are just a few strategies. Increasing positivity is really important when working with resilience, right? Because when we are in a more positive state of mind, our stress and anxiety are reduced, and we can also think more clearly. It broadens our mind. We can think, we can problem solve, where if you think about a time where you're in a real negative space, you can't think clearly. And that's just how our brains are made. If somebody I always tell my students, if somebody put a math test in front of you when you were at your saddest or most upset, could you do the math test? And they're always like, no, right? So we want to create this space for positivity so we can broaden and build. So a few things that we can have them do, and this is either virtually or in person, is start a gratitude journal. So every day write like 3 things that they're grateful for. The same thing with 3 good things. Identify, what are some things that you're grateful for. And you can even do this virtually when you're in your call. Each student that says, what are 3 good things? Or WWW, what went well. Now I put the 4-to-1 ratio just to remind myself to tell you, our brains are wired for negativity. And that goes way back. That's just how human beings are. And if you think about yourself, if you're told 5 good things in a day and somebody says something negative, chances are you're going to go home and dwell on that negative. So it's the same thing with our students. If we have to call out a negative behavior, I encourage us as educators to then point out 4 positive behaviors. And it's also important to realize that all behavior is communication. So if a child has a negative behavior, that's a communication. And it's really worth our time and effort to figure out what they are trying to communicate. And again, then also find 4 positive things. So, I like you're working really well. Thank you for complimenting somebody else. But to find that balance of that 4-to-1 ratio to help increase that positivity in that child and ourselves. Along that line is to schedule time for positive affirmation. I encourage my students to stand in front of the mirror every day and say, I am smart, I am strong, I have a great smile, I am worthy. And I encourage us as adults to do that. I don't think many of us take the time to treat ourselves as we would a friend. Any of these things, I know every single one of you out there would have no problem saying it to a friend. But can you say this to yourself every day while looking in the mirror? So I encourage you to start this practice and to pass this along to your children and your students. And lastly, I just want to address body language. I put the site there. Amy Cuddy has a wonderful talk on how our body language impacts our minds. And so there's the power versus the powerless pose. So I invite you to stand up. I'm going to stand up. I don't know if I can get my camera. So I invite you to stand up, and you see the person on the top in the blue. We're going to do the Wonder Woman pose, right? So your feet are going to be apart, your hands are going to be at your waist, and you're going to stand. And just notice how that feels to stand. If there are men out there, it's your superhero pose. Okay, but those of you that know Wonder Woman, that's how she stands, shoulders back. It's the power pose, head up, hands on your waist, feet apart. And when we change our body, we change our minds. And so what Amy Cuddy did was some experiments with adults before they took a test or before they had to do a presentation, and they held the pose for 2 minutes. And holding that pose for 2 minutes can determine how we think and how we feel. And so we fake it until we become it. We hold this pose until we become that power. And so I encourage you to practice this yourself. I had to do this before the presentation today. Or before your students have to present, teach them this. It's so powerful. You don't need resources, you don't need technology. And if you want more information about it, I encourage you to look at the TED Talk that she gave. And then that's it. That is me. So Karen, if you want to open it for questions.
Yes, thank you, Helene. I am now going to do my power pose. So I learned the power pose today. So thank you very much, Helene. So I see in the chat we have 3 hands raised. We have Emily Roll and Sophia Morley and Couture Clark Duncanson. Do you guys still have those questions? We do have some comments, Helene, that I do want to share. That was a great presentation. I will tell my daughter the same thing. So we have some people that are going to share it with their kids. We have some thank yous coming through. So yes, it was a wonderful, wonderful presentation. So I'm asking Emily Roll if she can send in her question. Okay, so one of the questions is, who gave the TED Talk on Power Pose?
Her name is Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y.
Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y. C-U-D-D-Y. A-M-Y-C-U-D-D-Y, Amy Cuddy. Okay, and what was the site again that you you gave a site for them to check out?
Well, that was Amy Cuddy's. I don't know.
Talk?
Yeah, that was Amy Cuddy's TED Talk.
Okay.
So if anybody got to see it, but otherwise, I'm sure if you Google Amy Cuddy TED Talk, you'll be able to find it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not very long. It's very well worth the time just to hear her explain more the studies that she did with it.
Okay, so we have some more comments coming in that I want to share. From Gailey Joseph, affirmations are definitely important, and thank you for the power pose. We'll be using it. From Indira Archer, I love the strategy focusing on the positive, what can happen instead of the long list of activities which they can no longer participate in. Mona Pratt says, thank you. Awesome presentation, Helene. Agatha Campbell, I learned something new. I will implement some of these strategies in my classroom. From Helen, yes, great power pose. I love that. I will be using it. And I encourage you guys to not just use it with your kids, but make it a family activity as well. There's so many things that you can implement. I know sometimes we look at the people outside of our homes, especially as educators and counselors, you tend to focus a lot on outside of yourself. You know, the students, your colleagues, all of those people who you focus on, and sometimes the people in your house. We neglect, we just assume that they are okay. And so don't forget to check in with those people that live in the house with you. The good thing is that you don't have to do that virtually. They're right there. And so please be mindful of the people that are right next to you. So while you're trying to help everyone else, don't forget those people that you love that are right in there, going through this lockdown, going through this virtual life with you, okay? So we have from Miss Simonad, Ampusam, I'm so sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Very insightful, thank you. From the Zone of Bethel, Power Pose. Okay, so that from Emily Rose, she said it's not a question, but a comment. So true about focusing on positive versus negative, especially in the time like COVID-19. LeDron Barr says, thank you. Excellent presentation.
Can I
All
just add one more thing that I didn't put in there, you know, especially now that we are on another lockdown. I would encourage you all, like each of us, to find like maybe one thing that you've always wanted to do that you can bounce back better. So like during the first lockdown, I had always wanted to do yoga, but I never took the time. I was always busy. So I committed to, during that lockdown, I was going to do yoga every day. I just completed 100 days of yoga yesterday. And so that was my bounce back better. So we have, you know, about 2 more weeks, hopefully not longer, but, you know, maybe, you know, I would encourage you to find something in those 2 weeks that you've always wanted to do or learn or become. I had students that wanted to learn a foreign language. I had one teaching herself Korean, one teaching herself Spanish. So, you know, maybe find what's inside you. And that's a way to become a role model for your students as well. As you know, build on yourself and bounce back better, you can share that with your students.
All right, thank you, Helene. We have 2 questions. We have 2 questions.
I was just about to say we have 2 questions.
All right, we have 2 questions, one for you, Helene, and then one we're going to go back to you, Niambi, okay? So the first question, which is for you, Ms. Helene, how do you balance creating a positive environment with helping your students be positive and see the silver lining in a difficult situation when also trying to be empathetic, not sympathetic? So I'll say it again. How do you balance creating a positive environment with helping your students to see the positive and see the silver lining in difficult situations while also trying to be empathetic and not sympathetic?
I'm hoping I'm interpreting the question the right way. I see the two, like, first of all, empathy and creating positivity going together. Acknowledging their feelings, right? So if a student does feel sad, to acknowledge and show that empathy, like, yes, you know, I'm sad and I feel sad with you, but then, you know, and then, not but and then, you know, pointing out, you know, what can we do with the sadness? And to also let students know, like, it's okay to feel sad. Sadness tells us something is wrong. We're all grieving, right? The world is changing, the world is grieving. Fear tells us something is wrong. So, you know, let them know that that feeling is okay and normal, because feelings tell us something. God has given us feelings to tell us something. And then, you know, from there, what can we do with this feeling? You know, what is this feeling telling us? What do we need? You know, what does this feeling need? And pointing out and going from the positive from that point. I don't know if I answered the question.
Well, I'm going to allow Dr. Niambi, you did, I think, and Dr. Niambi, I'm going to allow you to jump on that because the second question is for you as well. So I will repeat the first question that Helene just answered, and then I will also ask the second question. Is that okay? All right, so the question was, how do I balance creating a positive environment with helping your students be positive and see the silver lining in a difficult situation when also trying to be empathetic and not sympathetic? That's a question from Sharia Hasty. And then Gailey Joseph has a question. What are some practical steps to cultivating an empathetic response, especially when I would have been so accustomed to being more sympathetic than empathetic?
So I think Jewel can add to this as well. One of the things that I would say, because I think Helene did a good job at framing that, is when she said empathy allows us to be sorry with the person, right? And that's a really fine but important distinction between being sorry with someone and being sorry for someone, right? Being sorry for someone, you can look and be like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry for you. But being sorry with it is a different posture, right? It's a posture that requires for you to step in, to be closer, to feel closer, even if that stepping in is a virtual step. And so one of the things that we can do in creating empathetic responses is to acknowledge that empathetic responses don't necessarily mean that you have to have an answer for the situation that the person is engaging in. I think sometimes as educators, we kind of go into, okay, well, how can we fix this? And empathy doesn't require a fix. It just sometimes requires a feeling or a recognition of what the person is experiencing. Jewel, did you want to say anything to that?
Oh, yeah. So basically, like you said, Dr. Campbell, with being empathetic, your presence is more so much felt. It's not something what you could say or something what you could do, but it's actually you embodying that what the person is going through. A lot of times we, like as a people, we just want to hurry up, jump in and, provide some form of logic to a situation where sometimes we don't have nothing to say. So with that being said, just providing that open, non-judgmental space to let them know that, hey, I understand, even though that I'm not going through exactly what you're going through, but thanks for even sharing this with me. Let me let me hold like this positive space for you to feel comfortable in sharing your emotions, for you to feel actually loved, that I'm not dismissing what you're feeling, but I'm actually holding this open space for you. So with being empathetic, and how to be empathetic, you just really have to realize that it's not about you, and challenge yourself and push yourself beyond your current feelings and your current emotions, and to explore from the heart and not from the head. It's not so much logicking the situation, but it's actually just showing that emotions and showing them that, hey, your feelings and your emotions, they are valid, they are justified. There's nothing I could say to bypass it, but then to let them know that, hey, thanks for telling me, and I'm gonna be here for you even if my presence is enough. And sometimes no response is a good response, in the whole situation.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jewel. Before I turn it over to Charlene, there's a very interesting question that Anne Albury posted, and I guess anyone can chime in on this, but Jewel, I'll give you the lead on this. And the question is from Anne Albury: can a person truly empathize if they've never experienced what that person is going through? And I think in some way you already answered it, but just to reinforce what it was that you said about having that open space. So again, can a person truly empathize if they've never experienced what that person is going through?
I would say yes, because you could still be empathetic, although you might not have gone through the exact or similar situation what that person went through. As a counselor, or as a psychologist, I could say a lot of times when my clients bring up a lot of things, I didn't physically went through it, or I didn't had those same experiences. However, I know what it is to actually feel that emotion. Like, I know what it is to feel pain, or I know what it is to feel like you're losing it all, or to feel like you're by yourself, or to feel like you're alone. So even though that I might not have been through that exact same thing, I still know what it is to feel those emotions. And that's basically what being empathetic is, like embodying that emotion. So I might not have been through that exact same thing, but then I could still understand how you feel in that moment because I've felt similar feelings.
All right, thank you, Joel. And I promised that that was going to be the last question, but here's another one that I thought was also very interesting. And it was asking for how, if you can provide some tips to enhance empathy. So Rochelle Dean is saying that she is empathetic due to some of the experiences that she has had, but she sees sometimes that other people lack empathy. So how do you essentially teach people or encourage people or foster empathy and people who seem to have a hard time with it?
Ways in which we could foster empathy. Um, Basically, you have to realize that it's not about you. Sometimes, you have to challenge yourself to basically step outside of your current emotions and realize that, hey, if this person is actually telling me something, I don't want them to feel that, oh, I'm just disregarding it or anything, but just challenge it and be like, it's not about you. I can't make it about me. And like I said before, explore from the heart and not the head, and actually listen to understand and comprehend what they're feeling, and just not to respond, because sometimes you don't need to respond to everything, but like I said, like your presence, can be felt. And actually examine your own personal biases, and like check your attitude when you are talking with somebody, because sometimes your own personal biases and your own attitudes or even your own privilege can then give an answer or response and make it feel more so much sympathy and pitiful. And just be non-judgmental and actually understanding. When persons tell you something, don't be so quick to belittle them or just judge them for the decisions they made, but just understand and be like, okay, I understand that you did this because of this, but you know what, regardless, I'm still providing this space for you. I'm not logicking the situation, and I'm not trying to give you tips on what you could do now, but I'm actually giving you a safe space to be like, what, process, vent, or even talk about what's going on. So basically, checking your own biases, listening, understanding, providing a non-judgmental space, and realizing it's not about you. And you know what? When you starting to feel that, you given those response that are, judgmental or may come off, in unhealthy way, start to check that and just don't respond at all sometimes.
Okay, thank you very much, Jewel. We would love to read all of your responses and answer every question, but we do have some time constraints, and so I'm now going to pass it on to Charlene.
Hi, good morning, everyone. What a great conversation. The empathy versus sympathy is something that I'm working on myself, through this experience with Character Day. The difference between the two has really stuck with me. And so that's an area that I'm working on as well. So right now, using the chat, if there are particular strategies that you want to use, that you think you're likely to use, please plop them in the chat quickly, and then we will share a few of your ideas, because the goal here is to get you thinking about which of these things can I take and use on my everyday interactions. For myself, I know I'll be using the power pose for sure. Right? It's certainly, you can feel it inside that you feel different. Wow, lots of responses in the chat. Powerful. I see power, gratefulness journal. Lots of people using the power pose and www. Excellent. All right, and we will continue to look at your responses and help to use that to shape how we move forward. Also, I encourage the other participants to look at people's suggestions or the way they think that they're going to incorporate these things to help to develop your own ideas. So I'm just going to quickly do what's next. So we have session 2 next week. I will send out an email to everyone again today by this afternoon so that you can sign up for session 2, where we'll be talking about emotional intelligence. The PACE Youth Development Leader, Denika Curtis, she will be leading that. Then we have fostering soft skills through adversity. This presentation will be done by Stephen Thompson, a clinical psychologist who works with young men at the KP Lutheran Island School and also plays a role. He's a director of diversity and inclusion and health. So he should have great things to say, especially about how we can reach the young men in our community. We're going to touch a bit on safety in a virtual learning environment because, I mean, it seems it sounds like we're definitely going virtual, at least for the beginning. And so this is something we discussed last year, but we want to bring it back again this year with a fresh twist because it's even more important now. And we'll be doing a bit more further on how to participate in Character Day. Now, and our small grants program. Now, something I want you to think about during the course of this week. We give you lots of goodies, right? You get posters and armbands and t-shirts and stuff. But this year is different. 2020 is special. So we want you to think about how we can support you. If you're not in a physical classroom, then posters probably aren't going to help much. So next week you'll have an opportunity to share your ideas as to what do you need? How can we help you with your character education needs and strategies in this virtual or blended learning environment, and especially as you go on to implement Character Day. So look out for session 2's email. Also, after next week's session, you'll be getting another email that talks about how to register for your Character Day event. So this year you're going to register it locally at the PACE website. So that we can know what you're doing, so that we can follow you, etc. And then at the end, once you leave this presentation, you will go straight to it'll take you to a form, a feedback form. Please complete that feedback form, and that once you submit your results, you'll also have a link where you can automatically get your certificate. So please fill out the feedback form and also click on the certificate link so that you can get your certificate for participating today, right? This graphic here shows you what you'll see when you leave the webinar. You click on continue, and then you just follow through. All right, so now we just turn it over to Denika for a few moments. Denika Curtis is the Youth Development Leader at the PACE Foundation, and she will lead us or close us out with some meditation, with a mindfulness practice.
Good evening, everybody. So, next slide. So a little bit about mindfulness. Usually in today's world, we're so busy. People brag about being so busy and being able to multitask. But mindfulness is the exact opposite of that. It's the basic ability to be fully present and aware of what you're doing and not overly reactive or overwhelmed what's going on around us. So one way to practice mindfulness is through meditation. I see a lot of people were talking about they're gonna start their gratitude journal, or they have like a happiness jar, or Helene has mentioned that she has started a yoga practice. So perhaps you can even consider starting a meditation practice that can help you with mindfulness. So we're going to start. This is a very interactive part of the presentation. Start by making yourself comfortable. Sitting in your chair and allow your back to be straight but not stiff, with your feet on the ground. You can also do this practice standing up if you prefer, or you can lie down and have your head supported. Rest your hands gently in your lap. Allow your eyes to close or to remain open with a soft gaze. Take several slow, deep breaths. Breathing in through your nose and out through your nose or your mouth. I like to put my hand on my stomach to feel it expand on the inhale and relax as you let go on the exhale. Begin to let go of the noises around you. Begin to shift your attention from outside to inside yourself. If you are distracted by sounds in the room, simply notice this and bring your focus back to your breathing. So focusing on the breath, breathing in and out. Now let's bring your attention down to your feet. Begin observing sensations in your feet. You might want to wiggle your toes a little, feeling your toes against your shoes or your socks. Just notice without judgment. You might imagine sending your breath down to your feet as if your breath is traveling through your nose to the lungs and through the abdomen all the way down to your feet. And then back up again throughout your nose and lungs. Perhaps you don't feel anything at all. That's fine too. Just allow yourself to feel the sensation of not feeling anything. When you are ready, allow your feet to dissolve in your mind's eye and move your attention to your ankles, calves, knees, and thighs. Observe the sensations you are experiencing throughout your legs. Breathe into and out of the legs. If your mind begins to wander during this exercise, gently notice this without judgment and bring your mind back to noticing the sensation in your legs. If you still feel any discomfort or sign of pain or stiffness, don't judge this. Simply notice it. Observe how all sensations rise and fall, shift and change moment to moment. Notice how no sensation is permanent. Just observe and allow the sensation to be in the moment.
Actually, let me just go upstairs and get back to upstairs, okay?
What happened? With each out breath, may you let go of the tension you are carrying, and then gently shift your attention to your stomach and all the internal organs there. Perhaps you notice the feeling of clothing, the process of digestion, or the belly rising and falling with each breath. If you know opinions are arising in these areas, gently let them go and return to noticing sensations. As you continue to breathe, bring your awareness to your chest and your heart region. Just notice your heartbeat. Observe how the chest rises during the inhale and how the chest falls during the exhale. Let go of any judgments that may arise on your next out breath. Shift the focus to your hands and fingertips. See if you can channel your breathing into and out of this area, as if you are breathing into and out of your hands. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back to the sensation in your hands. And then, on the next out breath, shift the focus and bring your awareness up into your arms. Observe the sensations or lack of sensations that may be occurring there. You may notice some difference between the left arm and the right arm. No need to judge this. As you exhale, you may experience the arms soften and release. Continue to breathe and shift focus to the neck, shoulder, and throat region. This is an area where we often have tension. Be with the sensations here. It may be tightness, rigidity, or holding. You may notice the shoulders moving along with the breath. Let go of any thoughts or stories you have that are telling you about this area. And now, let your attention expand out to include the entire body as a whole. Bring into your awareness the top of your head down to the bottom of your toes. Feel the gentle rhythm of breath as it moves throughout the body. And as you come to the end of this practice, take a full, deep breath, taking in all the energy of this practice. And when you are ready, open your eyes and return your attention to the present moment. As you become fully alert and awake, consider setting intention that the practice of building awareness will benefit everyone you come into contact today. So you can open your eyes and relax. And this was just an easy meditation script that you can use. You can use with yourself, with your own practice, or with your students. I like to use it at the beginning of my presentations when I present to students, and they usually like it. They usually report that they feel calm and a little bit sleepy. And I included a few. There are more meditation apps, but in this presentation, I included 3 apps that I'm very familiar with that can help you get started or maintain a meditation practice. They're Headspace, which is like the #1 meditation app. People really love Headspace. Calm, which is the one that I use most frequently. It also has sleep stories to help people who have a hard time falling asleep. And there's Insight Timer that has millions of different meditations led by different gurus, different psychologists, and different people in the mindfulness field. Thank you.